So many people say to me, Sam, I love your ghost stories. And as people know, I have written a book with some of my stories in. So I decided to read one of those chapters to you. It's chapter 4, and it's about the little girl. So by Christmas '93, my husband and I had left my nan's house and we'd purchased a really large 2-bedroom flat. I was pregnant and my pregnancy was going well, and I was 6 months gone. It had been a really great year with a wedding, me and my husband getting married, buying our home and progressing towards becoming a family. Our moving day was the 22nd of December, and by the time the evening arrived, every box had actually been unpacked, so that was quite good. I'd even got the Christmas tree up and decorated it, and I was looking forward to spending the first Christmas together in our new home as a married couple. On the 3rd of February '94, my first daughter was born, though she had actually arrived 4 weeks early. 2 days prior to arrival, I had a vision. I saw that I was going to go into labour in my hallway and that I'd be unable to get up, let alone move, and I would have no way of getting access to the phone. My sister and I met up on the morning of my daughter's birth, planning to spend the day together. She went out job hunting, she didn't want to go alone. We were going about our business and I started getting these sharp pains in my thighs. They kept coming and going, and eventually they got to the point that they were unbearable and I couldn't walk anymore. So in the end I told my sister I could no longer take the pain, and so I was going to go home. So she agreed to come with me. Instead of simply just dropping me off like she normally did, she never came into my house. She came in for a cup of coffee. I made us both a cuppa, and then I made my way down to the hallway to go to the loo. As I went to sit down, I was paralysed by the worst pain that you could ever imagine. It ripped through my body and I fell into this hallway floor, screaming in agony, just like I had in my vision. I screamed for my sister and she actually came running, and she knelt beside me trying to calm me down. She thought it was safe, giving me the reassuring pat, and then leapt to her feet and ran to call for an ambulance. She then called my husband and my mum and the ambulance, and they all soon arrived together. I struggled to get up on my feet with the ambulance crew, but eventually they did get me to the hospital. And as soon as we arrived, my waters broke, and at 6:34, my firstborn, Demi, was born. My sister, like me, had experienced premonitions in the past, but they actually did terrify her. Had she had the same premonition about this fatal day, because she never left me, had she known something was going to happen, who knows? She never said, but the timing is suspect, because my sister and I only get together a couple of months, and she was with me on that particular day. It's also unusual for her to come in for a coffee, but she did, and I'll always be thankful to her no matter what and why she was there. If she hadn't been, I'd have ended up in that hallway alone. But anyway, I loved our little family and I loved being a mum, and every day Demi and I would spend our time alone in the flats together, and even more spiritual incidents started happening, some of which were witnessed by other people. When my daughter was asleep, I always sensed a little girl in the flat. She was never shy about letting me know she was there, and for the first 10 minutes she would play with my video machine, turn it on and off, and then run through the living room, down the hallway to the toilet, where she'd flush the chain, slam the door and make her way back to the video. And what she kept doing was like the process again, and over time, you know, that's more of a recording of a spirit rather than an intellectual one. But you know, she seemed very happy and lively, and she only came out when my daughter was asleep. When Demi was approximately 8 months old, this little girl started to become more of a daily visitor. So this then makes me think, oh, maybe she was intellectual. And Demi had her own room, which was a really large room. She had a big cot that stood in the middle of the room, away from all her other furniture. And I'd put her in her cot when it was a bedtime. I'd walk out of the room, turn the light off, and softly shut the door behind me. I'd then go in the living room to sit down, relax, or to do the housework or make dinner. One day I was actually in the kitchen preparing the dinner, and I was startled by this sudden outburst of laughter. At first I couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from, but then I realised it was Demi. When I went to check, I was shocked to actually find the door was wide open, the light was on, and Demi was sitting in the middle of the room laughing. And this started to actually happen every other night, and it continued until we actually moved out. This little girl, though, intrigued me, and I decided to find out more about her, and I asked an elderly neighbour who actually lived below if she knew anything. The woman was nearly 80 years old and had lived in the flats for over 30 years. In fact, she'd been the first to move into the flats, and before she had lived in the road, she'd actually lived in the road opposite the flats. So she actually saw them be built. She had a good memory, and though it was a sad one, she didn't know the story. The previous owners had actually had 2 children, a little boy and a baby daughter. And one day the baby girl would not stop crying, and the little boy tried to comfort her. with a pillow, unfortunately. He smothered her till she obviously stopped breathing. The parents were obviously distraught, and the little boy, who hadn't understood what he'd done, was diagnosed with an illness of some kind. The flat had then laid empty until we moved in. We also had another visitor in our flat as well, and I saw her many times. She was slim with curly hair, and she was always walking into my bedroom. She never spoke and never bothered me, and I wondered as if she was even aware of me. Could she just be a memory of the flat itself, like I said about these recordings that spirits sometimes do? Either way, I was curious to know more about her as well, and strangely, the woman below had never heard of her. Since my neighbour had no information, I thought maybe this mysterious lady was from an earlier date. So I went to my local library to research the history of the area, and they sent me to my local council offices. They showed me maps of the land throughout the years, but there was never any properties on it. I asked if there were any maps which went back even earlier, and they referred me to another building. I was hoping I'd find a home or even a name of the person, but I never did. Instead, I learned that in the 1700s there'd been a graveyard exactly where my flat stood. Could the lady have been buried there? I was curious, but I never found out anything more. And over the years, I thought about her fairly often, and I wished I had investigated it further. We sold the flats, and I became friends with the new owner. Prior to selling, I did actually inform her of our guests that we had, but she still wanted to buy it and move in. And when we met up one day, she told me that she'd heard the little girl and actually seen the lady as well. They never bothered her either. So just like in other places that I've lived in, spirits are still following me. But I wonder, where are they now? Because that flat has actually been demolished.